succinct. I didn't want to leave my house because winter is coming. Well, winter is here. When it does, I go into straight survival mode, which means I have no tolerance. I have no tolerance for the weak or bullies or cruel. I have no tolerance for the eye that can see the blood and the violence but can't stop strangling with its own hands. Friday night I will not go out. Last Friday night I did not go out because as soon as I arrived at my door, put the key in it, I could see myself sitting at a bar having a quiet drink and someone like magnetism would find me. And that would not go well. I didn't want to leave the house, but the man who runs the show got me another show and I wanted to say thank you, so I wanted to show up. Maybe I get to hear some people read poetry, maybe I'd like it, maybe I wouldn't, maybe it'd make me think, maybe it wouldn't. Thank goodness there were video games in the back. It was like the best thing ever. It was like sitting at home, listening to live poetry, shut out from every other person with the voice of the living person just far off away that you could feel them, but you didn't have to interact with their soul. Midnight is fueling, and she has always been waiting for me, but I have to drag my life through the day now, and it will become harder. People in the day have such strict masks that you can't see their teeth. And night is always here. It's there in the morning, and it's there when I get off work. There is no daylight. I live in a box. Luckily, I work with children, and it helps me explain the undercurrent of every adult I will ever meet. And it gives me a voice that if I talk to you at the right angle and the right tone, I can break your heart. I can also get you the fuck out of the hallway and make you read a book. We are sitting in the train, and we are talking to our ex-girlfriend. The ex-girlfriend we had to let go of, not because we didn't love her, not because she didn't love us, not because we weren't grown people and understood. It was just a little bit of immaturity when midnight came. I never raged at her. No, there was never any fear, but there was rage and childishness. And when she wakes up in the morning to find you screaming in the other room into a phone about shit that you can't solve, you might as well cut bait and keep her as a friend before the rage destroys any possibility of anything ever, ever, ever. And you're talking because midnight is coming. It is Thursday. You've been trudging through the week. And just then, you can feel the other echo of weakness when darkness brings rage. There's a young black girl. She's standing, the train is not leaving, and the door is open. Some white man in glasses with a backpack and an outfit that says, I hope one day to be something, but now I'm just middle class. Drunk on a Thursday, making my way home. I hate my life, my parents, my father, my children, but it's okay, because, well, we'll get to that part. He's having a go at the young lady, and a young man who has just passed me with his girlfriend with the blue hair, and for some reason they also remind me of the children who do well in the classroom, but sometimes I find them in the hall. He is already beginning to turn around and say, hey, are you okay? I see what's happening. The young lady in the doorway says to the gentleman, mind you, the train is not fucking moving. Mind you that we have still 2 minutes if anybody's watching the board. Says to the gentleman, I'm just standing in the doorway to check my phone to see if I can find my way home. And I was going to leave it alone. I was going to have a nice conversation with the ex, come out and listen to poetry and be warm and calm. I was going to leave it alone. It is the season of darkness and I draw the shit like magnets. I was going to leave it alone. But he opened his mouth. He opened his mouth to say, as if she was a child that he owned, a child that he had produced from some loins that I doubt any woman would match up with. He said, well, you always. I'm an educator. I say it to kids all the time, you're always. I say it's your fault. You should pay attention, look out for the consequence, but there was no consequence. I am trained to take the lack of appreciation that you have for your children and you put into them to erase that so that they might be citizens, grown-ups someday. I know when a young lady is being respectful. I know when she doesn't have to be, and that young lady is almost full grown. So I interrupt. I yell so loud the train shakes no. He looks at me because he sees a middle-class black guy with dreadlocks, so he's confused because the no seems like I'm in charge, but how can that be? His fantasy is already being interrupted, and all I can think about is that I don't want his blood on my hands, not even his soul on my hands. I shouldn't be even on this train. I shouldn't have gone out. It's like a magnet. Oh God, here comes this moral authority bullshit, but it's already out of my voice. The young lady said why she was doing what she was doing. The train is not moving and she doesn't fucking have to explain herself. And you stepped out of line when you started talking to her as if she had done something wrong. You started to say they always, and this young man is violently angry. I turn to him and you say, what you have to be aware of is it's just books. I work in a school and I see how it goes. He's trying to live out a fantasy. To be clear, he's trying to live out a fantasy. To be clear, all you've done is handle yourselves like adults, speak like grown-ups. But to be clear, it's because she is a child. To be clear, young man, to be clear, I can take him, you can take him, that's not the problem. He's trying to live out a fantasy. The police will arrive on the train to save him if either of us have to spread him apart from his will, but that's not the key. He's trying to leave a fantasy. He's trying to bait you, and I was clear. Very clear. So clear the train showed. I have not threatened this man. I have not demeaned this man. I have raised my voice to the level that no one cannot hear me, and I have embarrassed this man. He wants you to jump so he can live the fantasy of being older and telling the youth how they're supposed to be, the fantasy of the English. And the young man understood. It helped that the young girl sitting on his lap was pressing him down and said, you're at least smart enough to stop. You're at least smart enough to listen to wiser voices. And then he starts up. I say, don't look at me. Look at me because it will never stop. It only gets worse. Look at me. We will get through this together. Something about penis boy, and I almost wanted to stop hypnotizing the young man so that we could both learn survival all the fuck over again. To say, is that the best you got? I was clear with him. I did not demean the man. I did not threaten the man. But now the man is standing at the end of the train saying something about English after I already have. He is throwing every hook that he can without being embarrassed while the Eastern European woman on one side is filming him, and I assume the African diaspora woman on the other side is filming him. They're talking about how he'll go to jail. I'm looking into the eyes of the past and of the future. I am trying to keep him alive. I am trying to keep us alive. And I think maybe when the darkness comes in these 3 months, it's because I was exposed to so much violence that this period of time makes me not just a survivor, but waiting till there is nothing but me and another body, and all I can do is try to survive. But I am not little anymore, I am big. If I had stood up and let one scintilla of rage escape me, I would have at least taken his soul. If my hands had touched his body, there was no bone I could not break. Because I was not raw. I have carried so much, and I will carry so much from little, weak dreamers like that. The conquered, who think because they fell out of a vagina in a nation, and they are disappointed with their lives, that they can play to children, or to the other. I killed his pride for 15 minutes on a train ride. I watched him leave after getting close enough to call me nigger. He should have been brave enough to. The train still echoed with the harmony of a young black man who was beginning to learn to survive. And in all honesty, here's the part you're not gonna like. What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Because we're always doing the same fucking things. It's nice and neat that you figured out which new version of the old version of people who are fucking cool. But what are you doing other than commenting on a world in which we live? And you only exist. And if it offends you, then at least you're alive. And if it doesn't, then you make me sick. And if you nod, then you're still not doing a fucking thing. Because today, in a moment, if I hadn't have been there, that young man would have been arrested. And that guy maybe gotten smacked. And today, if I hadn't been talking to a woman I love, explaining why we can't be together because I don't want her exposed even sidelinely to my rage. If I hadn't been on the phone with her today, I might not have made it here.